Mr. Vice President, sticking with foreign policy, you acknowledge that your support and vote for the Iraq War was a mistake. What lessons did you learn from that mistake, and how might those lessons influence your foreign policy decision-making as president?
I learned I can't take the word of a president when, in fact, they assured me that they would not use force. Remember the context. The context was the United Nations Security Council was going to vote to insist that we allow inspectors in to determine whether or not they were, in fact, producing nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. They were not. And what's the first thing that happened when we got elected? The President Obama turned to me and said, get those troops out of there. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq. I admitted 14 years ago was a mistake to have trusted him. And I'm prepared to compare my foreign policy credentials up against my friend here on any day of the week and every day of the week.
Well, let's start off with the war in Iraq, Joe. I was there, too. I was in the House. I understood. And by the way, let's be clear about what that vote was. And you were there at the signing ceremony with Bush. Everybody in the world knew that when you voted for that resolution, you were giving Bush the authority to go to war. And everybody knew that's exactly what he and Cheney wanted to do. Most people who followed that issue closely understood that the Bush administration was lying through its teeth with regard to Saddam having weapons of mass destruction. I understood that. I was on the floor of the House time and time again. But the issue is not just the war in Iraq. That was a long time ago. The issue is the trade agreement. It wasn't so easy for me to lead the effort against disastrous trade agreements. The issue was the bankruptcy bill that you supported. The issue was the Hyde Amendment. The issue is the Defense of Marriage Act. The issue is whether or not in difficult times, and God knows these are difficult times, we're going to have the courage to take on powerful special interests and do what's right for the working families of this country.
Why did you vote not to sanction the Russians?
You know why? Because that had everything. You keep talking about Iran. That was tied to Iran. Russia was in Iran. I think John Kerry indicated his support for what I did. That was undermining the Iranian Agreement. That's why.
Not true.
That's why. And that's the only reason why. I have condemned Russia time and time again.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that the idea that I, in fact, supported the things that he's suggesting is not accurate. Look, I'm the guy that helped put together the Iran deal and got the inspectors in there. That was my chief of staff was the guy, my foreign policy guy, doing that negotiation. I was the guy that helped put together a 60-nation organization to take on the ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. I've dealt with these folks. I know them, and I know what they're like, and I know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. The fact is, this Bernie's notion about how he embraces folks like the Sandonistas and Cuba and the former Soviet Union and talks about the good things they did in China is absolutely contrary to every message we want to send the rest of the world.
Senator Sanders?
I have led the effort against all forms of authoritarianism, including America's so-called allies in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. And in fact, as you may know, work with conservative Republicans to utilize for the very first time the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the horrific war in Yemen led by Saudi Arabia. That's what I did. So my view is that in a world moving toward authoritarianism, the United States has got to be the leader where people all over the world look to us
Thank you, Senator.
for guidance.